Legal tampering is on around the NFL. Tons of huge moves leading up to the opening of free agency. We've got big trades, Geno and DK, Garrett and Allen with mega deals, and a whole bunch of news flying in on Monday morning. Coming at you on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. I know all the everydayers out there are subscribed up already. If you're not, make sure you hit that button on YouTube or anywhere you listen to this podcast. And if you're already subscribed, hit the thumbs up. If you're on YouTube, let us know you stopped by. We appreciate you. And welcome to the show if you're brand new. Breaking down the entire league here every single day is what we do on Peacock and Williamson. So hang out with us through the legal tampering, the actual new league year. We've got tons of trades. And, of course, the NFL draft season is upon us. So let's get right to it after I let the folks know that FanDuel is the ones that brought you this episode. And right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets. And all you got to do is win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. All right, tampering is coming fast and furious. We got a lot of big moves happening. Notes on Drew Dahlman and the offensive line Chicago Bears are building. Looks like Chris Godwin staying in Tampa, and I'm sure there'll be some massive news as we're in the opening hour of legal tampering as we record this podcast, but tons in the last 24 hours as well. And I think we have to start with the biggest moves. The Seattle Seahawks are really transitioning into a new era of their football team. And this is the post Pete Carroll era. And there's a new Pete Carroll era. And those two eras got together and said, I want the new Pete Carroll era to look like the old Pete Carroll era. And the post-Pete Carroll Seahawks said, we want to look different than the old Pete Carroll era. So Geno Smith, the big first domino of quarterback movement in the offseason now. Geno Smith is going to the Las Vegas Raiders to play for his old head coach. And as of now, Matt, the Seattle Seahawks don't have a quarterback. So will we find out in the next 30 minutes what that plan is at quarterback? Could the draft potentially be the plan at quarterback? And not only Geno Smith going as number one wide receiver over his tenure as a Seahawk, DK Metcalf is on his way to Pittsburgh. So massive moves made by the Seattle Seahawks to start the 2025 offseason.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, I guess that's as good a spot to start as any, because since we've got together last, there's been a flurry of activity. You sort of mentioned it. We hit the record button here at 12:30 Eastern, a half hour into this whole process. So I'm sure much will happen by the time many of you listen, but bear with us. That's just the world of podcasting. Seattle, I really like where their defense is at. Defensive-minded head coach, drafted Murphy, Weatherspoon. That's in a really good place to me. But as of this recording, they don't have a quarterback. They really have one pass catcher in Smith-Njigba. They got a pair of running backs, and they have massive needs on the interior O-line. They were really cash-strapped, so this isn't super surprising. And Geno is well up in age, and maybe that's just not their guy. We saw an offensive coordinator change there. Things didn't work particularly well on that side of the ball. And I think they just flat out didn't want to pay Metcalf the big money that the Steelers did, and I think there's a lot of job security in Seattle right now to pull this off. All of a sudden, they have a lot of picks, particularly on day 2. But I don't know where the offensive answers come. I mean, maybe Darnold signs there 5 seconds from now. I don't know. He's been linked to them quite a bit, and I would understand that.
Yeah, and there's some other suitors for Sam Darnold and maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers who have receivers and no quarterback as well. It's pretty rare to have teams with kind of like, oh, we got no quarterback right now. Okay, let's see how it goes. And there's a couple of teams that way now in the NFL. To be honest with you, I think I like Geno Smith. He's a good quarterback, and there's a floor there now with him. And I actually love the Geno Smith trade for both the Seahawks and the Raiders.
I do too.
The Seahawks,
I think he wanted to play for Carroll, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I think that's a nice match and maybe even get the most out of Geno there than the new regime in Seattle. especially without, you're not only did DK Metcalf get traded, but Tyler Lockett was released the same day too. So that's two big-time players for a long time for that franchise that are now gone. So it is the Jackson Smith and Jigba show. He already got the most targets in that offense. So if you want a volume quarterback for a team that, who knows, are they going to be bad? Fantasy football, JSN might be a better fantasy asset than a real football player at some point right now, because that's definitely a player you want to put your stock in if you're a fantasy football player. But the Seahawks were in a place where it's like, do we want to be a 9-win team every year?
Right.
And I think they're better off, even if they get worse from this move, even if they don't sign Darnold. Or, I mean, how much worse would they be if they ended up with Kirk Cousins for right? And even if they completely collapsed, is that the worst thing? We talked about this with the Minnesota Vikings for years, ironically, with Kirk Cousins as their quarterback. Like, okay, you guys are going to be pretty good every year. Mm-hmm. You're just playing for the middle. And
trust me, I deal with that every day here.
I mean, even the Steelers make the playoffs more often and in a more competitive environment. So I would say they're even in a better spot with their consistent, because they're above mediocre. But the Seahawks right now, our team is just kind of like riding the wave. And where you really going to go? And so for the Seahawks, whether you get a lot better or a lot worse right away, you got to get out of the middle, I think. And
drastic change. Yeah.
And so I like the move. You get a 3rd-round pick. They traded DK, got a 2nd-round pick. They have 5 picks in the top 100 to build the team in their new coach's image, right? And then for the Raiders, they're the opposite, where they just need to climb to the middle.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I love it for the Raiders too. Let's bring some respectability back to this organization. Win some football games, and it's not like Geno Smith is really going to prevent you from doing some things that, might affect your team down the road, but you've got to raise the floor for your football team. And that starts with a quarterback that can get you there. And you still might have the 3rd or 4th worst quarterback in the division, best quarterback in the division in the AFC West. So look, Geno Smith's not going to take you to Super Bowls probably if you're the Raiders, but you got to raise the floor. So for the Raiders, they needed to climb to the middle. For the Seahawks, they needed to get out of the middle. So I love it for both teams.
I do too. And I also expect the Raiders to draft someone. I mean, the Ohio State connection is overwhelming, but could Shedeur Sanders end up there in the 1st round? Or, again, I've threw a lot of compliments the Raiders' way, starting with ownership, down through Brady, Pete Carroll, offensive coordinator. Now there's a quarterback. Like, every step of the ladder now has something respectable on it, where it used to be question mark, mess,
What about Shedeur Sanders and the Seahawks?
I can see that too. Yeah, right.
Does Shedeur fall out of the top 10? Now you're in range to even trade up a couple picks you want to. Who knows? Maybe Shedeur Sanders falls to pick 18 potentially.
Maybe. Or does that become like Jackson Dart land? I mean, who knows? We just know these quarterbacks get driven up, and I wonder. Obviously, money spoke a great deal with the Myles Garrett situation, but Schefter's been saying forever they're going to take a quarterback at 2. If Ward's gone, was that part of it with Myles Garrett? Like, hey, Myles, we're going to get you a quarterback and we're going to get you money. We're not going to trade you. I don't know. It's a Wild West right now. It's crazy. It's hard to keep up.
I just saw the latest news, which is something that is very bizarre to me, and it's not a major player in the free agent scene, but it's much bigger money than I thought that the Washington Commanders are spending on Javon Kinlaw. So we'll talk about some of
that. Just a minute. Your former Niners got scooped up in the last half hour here. Yeah.
Like, teams are fighting to make former 49ers backups their starters with Jalen Moore and now Javon Kinlaw, which that one really scratches my head because he's not a good football player. But we got to talk about DK Metcalf and what that means for the Pittsburgh Steelers now, who, by the way, also don't have a quarterback. So what is the plan?
Skylar Thompson leading the way, dude.
Bring back Doug Hodges, man. Myles Garrett staying with the Browns. Josh Allen, we knew he was staying in Buffalo, getting paid. More about guarantees there. A very interesting contract. A lot of legal tampering happening live, and sure, some breaking news as we go here through the first hour of the new tampering period, the new negotiating. Look, we know it's not called legal tampering, but I call it legal tampering. Everybody knows what that means. Let's tamper next. This episode of Peacock and Williamson brought to you by Intuit TurboTax. And taxes used to be waiting and wondering, and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. Let the expert handle it, and you expertly handle your own stuff that you're so good at doing every single day. And an expert who will find every deduction possible, file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax live full service, real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at turbotax.com/guarantees. So DK Metcalf is on his way from Seattle to Pittsburgh. And look, it's been what? Year and a half, 2 years, 2.5 years that the Steelers have been trying to find another wide receiver there. And they found a guy. Talk to me, Matt, about the fit, though, for DK Metcalf and George Pickens with no quarterback. Are they going to just drop back, play action, chuck it up? Because they're not super complimentary wide receivers with DK.
No, they're pretty redundant.
And George Pickens. So that's an interesting group there.
Well, I do think there's a 50% chance Pickens then becomes on the move. You know, they wanted to.
Pretty high.
What's that?
That's
pretty high. Pretty high. Now, I also think, especially if Russell Wilson ends up the quarterback, and I mean, it's not even worth speculating what quarterback's going to end up where, because all that stuff's going to answer itself soon. But they were talking to Fields. Fields is at least is testing the market as we speak. I thought he'd get signed over the weekend. Wilson and Metcalf are like in each other's weddings. I mean, I heard today that Wilson introduced Metcalf to his wife. You know, like, so that seems like a Wilson-esque move in that. Only the I tweeted this today, and Twitter being down is not making me thrilled at the moment. Like, only the Eagles threw deep balls outside the numbers more than the Steelers last year. So I think that's going to be part of the case no matter who, if it's Rodgers or Darnold or Fields or Wilson. These have these two behemoth deep ball throwers to get people out of the box and run the football. I mean, they ran into loaded boxes over and over and over. And more than anything, I just think they've wanted a number one receiver for a very long time now.
Yep.
You know?
And they're telling us with that, not only sending a second round pick to Seattle for DK Metcalf, gave him a big money contract, $30 million per year, right, as well, and an extension. So they're telling us that he is their number one wide receiver and not Pickens too. So that kind of lends some credence to, well, we're probably not going to do a huge free agent contract to keep Pickens around, which means that's a signal for teams probably to call about Pickens. Maybe not this offseason, maybe next offseason. I don't know.
Or trade deadline, or who knows, or draft day. I mean, they're not going to put in any hurry, but they got the bird in the hand here with DK, and I think they're pretty thrilled with it, you know. And
the Steelers surely aren't done, obviously, because on offense, because you got quarterbacks and you got offensive line and you got wide receivers and everything else to figure out there as well.
No, I think they'll be quite active. Yeah, I think they'll be quite active.
Okay, let's get to some of the breaking news here before we talk about the big deals done by Myles Garrett and Josh Allen. I'm flabbergasted by what I'm seeing here, and I'm double checking to make sure that this is correct from Adam Schefter. Former 49ers and Jets defensive tackle Javon Kinlaw is rejoining his former GM, who was assistant GM in San Francisco, Adam Peters, who clearly liked him when they drafted him number 14 overall in 2020. A 3-year, $45 million contract, including $30 million guaranteed. So 2 years of the 3-year contract at $15 million per guaranteed for Javon Kinlaw. Matt, I've watched this player a lot. They tried to replace DeForest Buckner with Javon Kinlaw, and it didn't work out. He's not a good football player. He's huge, still not good run defender, doesn't bring a pass rush, and he's constantly hurt. This is one of the worst deals I've ever seen.
It looks terrible to me. I mean, you're going to move on from Allen to Kinlaw. I mean, talking about getting a lot worse just on the field. You're not even get that much younger, or, you know, I mean, like, what are we doing here?
Because Kinlaw was brought in to replace DeForest Buckner for the 49ers. They traded DeForest Buckner. They brought in Kinlaw. It didn't work out. It was a bad move overall. The Buckner trade by itself was okay if you could have stuck the landing. They didn't, because they brought in a bad player that wasn't able to replace the good player that they let go. The Commanders have Daron Payne, a defensive tackle. They drafted Johnny Newton last year and now have traded away Jonathan Allen. It was pretty clear. It was like, okay, cool. You got your defensive tackles. You got your guy you already paid in Payne.
Yeah.
You got your second year guy who didn't have any kind of training camp at all because he was injured. You expect a big jump from him in year 2. He was a top 50 draft pick for you. You're good at tackle. And what do? They go and spend a bunch of money at defensive tackle after letting Jonathan Allen go. And now they get worse at the third tackle. I don't know what they're doing. I've been all in on everything the Commanders have done. This just seems like a weird waste of money. Maybe they got some extra cap and they don't know what to do with it. And they're like, well, DJ Jones we wanted DJ Jones. He got 15 million. So we'll just give 15 million to the next guy per year with a couple of years guaranteed. I hate this move. This is the worst move I've seen so far.
Yeah. And again, there's obviously a Niner connection. They traded for Debo, you just laid it out. I mean, what the impression I'm getting, there's a couple, major themes so far is, first of all, a lot of teams re-signed their off-the-ball linebackers, that are quality players, the Boltons of the world. I meant to mention that when we were talking about Seattle. Quality off-the-ball linebackers aren't as easy to find. They're not hitting the open market. They nailed those guys down. But the real theme to me, and this applies to everything we've seen today, like Robert Spillane just got signed by the Patriots a second ago. I mean, I don't think anyone cares about money anymore. I've mentioned this with the Patriots in particular. The Chargers are another one that has a ton of cap space, and they gave Khalil Mack a big contract today. I don't know that these teams can spend to the cap. The cap's gone up faster than contracts deserve.
A lot of $15 million per year for a lot of players as well.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
Jamie Sherwood was in one that was kind of like an under the radar guy. And I thought he would maybe be a cheap player that the 49ers would bring in. And with Robert Saleh coming back over from the Jets, and he got a nice little payday to stay with the New York Jets as a true starting caliber, linebacker that can cover. So those are valuable players in the NFL, making a lot of money. Buccaneers have been busy. They kept, looks like $22 million per year on a 3-year contract to keep Chris Godwin home.
I actually thought that was a bargain.
And then the first move of the morning was adding Hassan Reddick.
Immediately, 1201 or whatever. Yeah.
Well,
pass rush has certainly been a problem for him. Pass rush and off the ball linebackers are their biggest needs. And keeping Godwin, that offense is pretty formidable. Irving, 3 receivers, good line, Baker. I think the Bucs are in really good shape on offense. And then, here's another example. This just happened 1 second ago, too. Jordan Lewis gets signed by the Jags, the nickel corner. He's fine. He's a good player. Highest paid nickel corner ever. They didn't say how much, but he's the highest paid nickel corner ever.
$15 million per year because everyone's getting $15
million a year.
Including guys that were backups the year before. Jalen Moore, who was the guy who filled in nicely for Trent Williams for the 49ers at left tackle. The Chiefs are signing him to be their starting left tackle. 2 years, $30 million, $15 million per year for Jalen Moore. So they clearly liked something they saw in his time. And look, if you prove that you could be a decent starting offensive tackle for 5 games, guess what? You become a million. You get $15 million per year in the NFL now.
Why would Tyron Smith or Morgan Moses or any of those guys ever retire? We didn't even mention Stanley, which would have been the biggest, most days would have been the biggest news of the day. And then another Niner just signed. Jimmy Garoppolo is going back to the Rams. All these old Niners. They're just getting scooped up. No big shock there.
How about the son of a former 49er, Drew Dahlman, getting paid in free agency now? And the Chicago Bears are not messing around. Their vision is clear for Ben Johnson. He wants a monster offensive line. And that's all they've done is just rebuild the offense. They've added 3 starters already, and we're only less than an hour into the legal tampering period, and free agency technically hasn't even started yet. And now Drew Dahlman, the center coming from the Atlanta Falcons, is going to be the new starting center for the Chicago Bears.
Well, clearly they're done at center guard. Rarely do you see something like that where they just go get 3 veterans within 24 hours or whatever. Boom, boom, boom. They drafted Wright in the first round to play right tackle. I don't know if they're going to they might just be happy at left tackle at this point. There's not a great left tackle sitting there for their first round pick. Do they move to the defensive line and all these pass rushers that are available? Money aside, they're a much better football team than they were a week ago.
Absolutely. As some more news trickles in. We've got some more contracts to talk about here. A couple of massive contracts, though, that were divvied out over the last couple of days. Myles Garrett staying with the Browns and having a change of heart, which is interesting. I think we know why now. And Josh Allen, $55 million per year. That might not seem like the mega deal that I thought he was going to get, but why it makes sense for Allen and the Bills. Next. This episode of Peacock and Williamson brought to you by FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on all of that action like never before. And right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and even who's going to cut down the nets. And, oh man, of course, hey, it's draft season. You can bet on tons of NFL draft props. Who's going to win the next Super Bowl? If you think things that happen in free agency are going to change that, tons of other ways to bet on the NFL, even in the offseason, NBA, Major League Baseball getting going. But of course, March Madness, some of the funnest way to play and maybe win a little cash is the March Madness, the college tournament every single year. Fast and easy. The FanDuel app is simple to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly. No need to wait around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. That is FanDuel.com. So Myles Garrett had a change of heart. And what could have possibly changed Myles Garrett's heart? I thought this was going to drag out. It turns out it didn't, because he just blows away all of the markets for non-quarterbacks, all of the defensive end markets, $40 million per year on a new extension for Myles Garrett. And I guess that's one way to change somebody's mind. This looked like it's something that could get ugly. And now Myles Garrett says he's going to try to recruit some other free agents to maybe come and join him with the Browns. Rest in peace, Myles Garrett's chance at a ring, potentially. I don't know. I'm not sure on what's going on there. Speaking of teams that need to figure out quarterback, like the Cleveland Browns, but Myles Garrett is staying, and they paid him a lot, and they went way over the top of all of the wide receivers, all of the other defensive ends, the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. And that one might not get topped until, you know who really hates this deal?
The Bengals.
The Bengals.
And the Cowboys.
And the Cowboys.
Yeah, that's what I said. I would think Parsons gets more. He's younger.
He has to. Next one up always gets more. And he's on.
Right.
He's the one guy that's on the level that you could say deserves to have that money.
Yep.
Right. Yep.
TJ Watt's up after this year too. They're talking about extending him. I bet he comes in a little less at his age, but I mean, still, that's going to be a big buck, you know.
Although wait one more offseason, cap goes up again.
Right. I mean, the cap's going up at an astronomical number. I almost don't care about any of these numbers anymore. I mean, that's an insane number for Garrett. But I don't want to harp on this because I have harped on it for a month or two. The Saints and Browns were in such bad financial situations that I really, and I am not a tanker, thought tanking was absolutely the right call for both these teams. And to a lesser degree, they gave Carr all his money in a signing bonus. He's an $80 million cap hit next year for the Saints. He's going to get cut. I mean, like, is that going to get you? What's that get you buying 1 year of Derek Carr for the Saints? I don't understand it at all. And I guess I give the Browns credit. I'm always critical of them, not because they fired me 20 years ago, but I just don't think they're very self-aware, you know, that,
well, clearly
are they a contender, you know?
That's a symptom of a problem they have, right?
Yeah,
and
right.
I think they should have given Williamson $40 million.
If they're throwing money around, I mean, but anyway, I'm sure they'll sign Kirk Cousins and they'll make a run at it, and they spend money more than any team in the league. So in a way, I respect it, their aggression, and that they think that they can compete, and maybe they can, and they have a better chance with Garrett, obviously.
It is an organizational philosophy. They want a thing, and they're like, well, we are willing to maybe even
more
do
than
something, which is give too much money. Deshaun Watson or Myles Garrett, or whoever it is.
Right.
We'll give all the money. We'll do all to make it happen. You know, here, we'll throw money at the problem and see if it gets better.
And Philly's sort of that way too. They're just a lot smarter about it.
A lot smarter about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Josh Allen, $55
I don't know
million.
what to make of this one. I mean,
I thought Josh Allen, when he did a new deal, would get $70 million per year. I thought it was
me too.
Big number. He was going to go over the top of all the quarterbacks like Myles Garrett did with the defensive ends. But this is this is an interesting deal. Is it team friendly to do $55 million a year, but then have most of it guaranteed? So it was all about the guarantees.
That's right. I think he gets.
And this is, I think, an awesome move for both the Bills and Josh Allen to say, look, okay, I need to be set, but you guys can still, I'm not going to hold your hand over the coals. I'm not going to go so high on my yearly average of dollars that you can't build a team around me. And it's kind of crazy to say that $55 million per year could be a deal, especially as we go forward the next couple of years and what other quarterback contracts could be done. It'll look like it's for Josh Allen to be up for a free agent. We
joked about that on Friday. It'd been 100
to not even get the highest per year annual rate of any quarterback in the league right now. It's kind of crazy, right?
It is.
He's barely ahead of Tua as far as AAV, but it's the guarantees.
So much guarantees
for this
one.
Right. So a lot of guarantees. That's a better contract than if the guarantees weren't there. So the money plays up. And obviously, if you're a quarterback and you're Josh Allen, you're like, okay, good, I'm set. And who knows? They could revisit this deal in a few years anyway. So who knows? These again, I joked about it last week. It's like some of these deals, man, because we see all the players that get cut right before. So it's like, hey, money doesn't matter. Let's throw all the money at all the players. But guess what? None of these guys are going to see the last year of these contracts either. So they're not written on paper. These contracts are written on toilet paper. Some of them.
Yeah, they're not chiseled in stone. That's for sure. Yeah, right. Real quick on Allen, though. I mean, you got to think. I mean, I've compared him to Cam Newton. He's a lot better than Cam Newton. But Newton around this age, kind of, his body failed him. And now Allen can be like, if my body fails me, I'm still getting checks. I mean, I got a huge money no matter what.
Got those guarantees.
And Tom Brady's the best example of this, maybe in the history of the sport. But Mahomes and Allen, it feels like they're now in a partnership with their team. You know, it's not an employee-employer relationship where, like, Cincy and Burrow, they don't quite feel like a partnership. You know what I mean? Where Allen and Mahomes signed that 10-year deal, and we're in this together, our legacy. You know, I'm going to retire a Bill. I'm going to retire a Chief. Blah, blah, you know what I mean? There's something to be said for that.
Absolutely. Another huge contract that has come down in the last day or so. I don't even know what time this one showed up, but it was like, wow, the Panthers are re-upping Jason Horn. They made him the highest paid defensive back in NFL history. Talking about big contracts and teams throwing money around. The Panthers are like, look, we've got to pay some foundational pieces. We're just glad that we have a player that we could pay this much to. Now with JC Horn, it's been injuries. He's been a really good.
That's been his only problem,
and he's super talented. But he gets more money than even Patrick
Surtain and right
in the same draft, right? They were they even back-to-back picks? Maybe they're both in the top 10 of that draft.
Yes, they were very, very close. Yeah.
Yes. And so JC Horn, $70 million guaranteed in his $100 million contract over 4 years. So $25 million per year, which is, you know, still not that big compared to wide receivers. And we talked about how the wide receiver market's inflated. I think it's getting more and more difficult to play cornerback in the NFL. So, you know, it seems like a huge contract because it's the highest paid defensive back, but were corners being underpaid compared to wide receivers? And at $25 million per year, would you rather have JC Horn at quarterback or, I don't know, one of these wide receivers that's making $30 million per year now?
Yeah. I think your point you said to kind of start that conversation is really valid. Is who else are we going to give it to? You know, I mean, we're a ways away to the quarterback. I mean, who else is up for contract soon? That, you know, they signed Derek Brown recently, then he got hurt, and it's kind of funny money at this point. I mean, it's just the league is so healthy, and I guess health is the key with Horn too. I mean, he's a phenomenal player that doesn't get the credit he deserves because he's been on a bad team and a bad defense. But when he's healthy, I think he's a top 5 type of guy.
Absolutely. There's tons of other smaller moves and some previous.
Devontae Adams is a Ram. We won't even bring that up today. You know what I mean? Like, there's crazy stuff. I mean,
yeah, Devontae Adams to the Rams. So they trade in Cooper Kupp for Devontae Adams now for the Los Angeles Rams. And I think it's a good trade. And I do think that there was we talked about how the Steelers, you know, maybe complementary with the 2 wide receivers and DK Metcalf and George Pickens is kind of an odd fit, similar stylistically. I think Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua were the same, where they're kind of similar stylistic players, tough guys over the middle.
Nacua replaced Kupp, you know, right?
And so now Puka Nacua can be that target hog over the middle, power player, run after catch. You scheme him up and get him the ball, and then Devontae Adams can be the natural, like, I'm going to go run routes, and then me and even late in the down. In some cases, me and my quarterback Matthew Stafford can do some of this backyard stuff and maybe look like some vintage Aaron Rodgers to Devontae Adams. So I actually like the fit, and it's not a long-term expenditure for the Rams.
No, and I thought they got him at a pretty good discount on all by the receiver market. He goes to the West Coast, which he's made well known he wants to do. It's pretty much a contending team. I think Nacua will do the dirty work. Like, I don't think they're going to ask him to do the Cup Nacua crackback on defensive end stuff. He's just going to first down, 3rd and 8. Adams gets you 10, and you'll probably see a lot of single coverage. I like it.
One more note on wide receivers. It's not about something that has happened, but it's about something that's going to happen. And the New England Patriots are like the new Steelers, where they've been looking for a year to find some more wide receivers for their young quarterback. And they've been in on everybody. They were in on the DK Metcalf trades. They were in on Ayuk last summer. They were in on Chris Godwin reportedly before he just re-signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So the next big wide receiver move, look out for the Patriots, because they're still working, and there's still probably some possibilities out there for some players to potentially go to New England, and they're trying to do something. So that's probably one of the next big trades I could see happening. I just don't know which receiver it's going to be, or if there is any left.
I mean, even if it was just Cooper Kupp to give you a veteran in the room and then draft someone, or, go after the next guy, or who knows. I think that is interesting. And hopefully by tomorrow, we have some quarterback dominoes. I mean, to me, Fields, Wilson, Rodgers, Darnold, I mean, they're all going to end up somewhere soon. And I just think there's a domino that's going to fall like as soon as we stop hitting record today.
Absolutely. And there will continue to be dominoes falling all throughout the free agency period. And of course, we will have it all covered for you and broken down. So anything that happens in the next 24 hours, tune in here and we will break it down. I mean, this is a fun time of the year. I love the NFL offseason. In some ways, this is a better day than sitting down and watching NFL football for 8 hours. I love it. And Matt and I eat it up. Draft season, trade season, free agent season is upon us. So stay tuned here and make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Back tomorrow, Peacock and Williamson.